Yo, people, welcome back to another stream to Women's Cricket World Cup semi-final preview. We got a few big games. I got Manny joining me. He will be here in a few minutes. Don't you worry about that. But it's some big matches, and there's some rivalry in the semifinals. Um, but yeah, just give a couple of minutes for the people to come in, and I'll just go. I'll get um, the results so long. So yeah. But if you are new, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Share the channel, that would be massively appreciated. And yeah, there's a few interesting matches. Two, three matches remain with the two semifinals and the final. Going to look at the standings now shortly. I'm just going to get it up. Standings, and then we will talk about the teams that have qualified. So, let me share my screen. So, Group 1, you got Australia, South Africa, who have qualified, of course, South Africa, those nations, where I am in South Africa. Got New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. So, one sec. So, Australia, they didn't lose one match. They were pretty good this tournament. They were exceptional in most cases. And if you look Bangladesh, they were really poor. Lost all four matches. And versus South Africa, they probably should have gotten our two openers out in the beginning. So yeah, but Manny is here, so I'll come in. Stream people, welcome Manny. One sec. There we go.
Hannah, good to see you. And I'm really sorry I was a little bit late, but hopefully I didn't miss
No,
too much.
so,
No, did I
no,
miss
no.
anything? Great. So I just heard
Just
you say that you thought South Africa were in a way lucky to have gotten out of the group alive. Why would you say that?
I think just Bangladesh match cause that first few overs, the first 4 or 5 overs, Bangladesh they had a few run-out chances, drop catch, LBW that was given out, but the ball missed the wickets after review. That review was also done very late. Wolfhard wasn't convinced that she was so in, and so I think if we could have lost a few wickets. Our Brits and Wolfhard could have gone out way earlier. That sets up the match in a completely different way. You lose Wolfhard or Brits in the first two overs. It brings in um, an not an informed cap in, and that leads to Sunay Luz, who has been all right this tournament, but not smashing it to come in. So that's a big thing. Um, but I think Bangladesh, other than versus South Africa, I think they were pretty poor. Australia, like I said, they were on all cylinders. They the number one ranked team in the world almost. I believe they are. But then you got Sri Lanka, New Zealand, and South Africa. So Sri Lanka they beat of course South Africa. New Zealand they they lost to Australia, Then they lost to us. Then they beat Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Now it came Sri Lanka were after they beat Bangladesh, they were second place, and they just needed to beat New Zealand and hope Bangladesh can somehow beat South Africa. And New Zealand then beat Sri Lanka, so Sri Lanka couldn't finish their job because if they were to beat New Zealand, they would have qualified, but they of course didn't, which set up South Africa in a perfect scenario for us just to beat a woeful Bangladesh side. And yeah, that's a sort of group one for me. I think you look 3 teams on 4 points. It's a pretty tight group. Australia, of course, heavy favorites, but yeah. What did you make of group one?
It's funny, really. You did mention that South Africa are very lucky to have gone through. And I think in several of their matches, it pretty much showed the folly, in my absolute opinion, of leaving out the ex-skipper Danny van Niekerk, who, she was coming back in after several injuries and had really worked so hard to get to a good semblance of fitness. And it's also gutting in a way that the cutoff time was actually reduced by 30 seconds. So had that cutoff time not been reduced, she would have been in the squad alongside her spouse, Marizanne Kapp. And her experience and proven quality with the bat would prove to be really important in a tournament like this, and certainly in a game against Sri Lanka, where batting depth was really the most important thing, and the lack of partnerships was what cost the Proteas in that close game. And
yeah, I agree
just,
on that.
It was just a question, really, of I think South Africa did also get lucky with the fact that Sri Lanka, who would have been decent value for qualifying for the semis had they beaten what was until then a very poor New Zealand team themselves, just choked on that day. And they simply weren't able to find any answers to a determined New Zealand team that was eager to keep their slim semi-final chances alive, but at the very least go out on a high after losing those 2 games against Australia and South Africa in a very heavy manner. And let's also not underestimate the importance/danger of heavy wins and heavy defeats, because run rate always plays a very big role. And of course, as you said, if Sri Lanka had beaten New Zealand, the South Africa-Bangladesh game would have been completely academic. Now, coming to the South Africa-Bangladesh game, I actually would in my own way, credit South Africa for playing the type of game that they did. Because sometimes in cricket, Hanno, there comes a time when you need to have a little bit of attrition in order to win games, and sometimes that's how it's proved. I also take your point that Bangladesh had met more of their chances to, put the South Africans in all sorts of trouble. Marufa, in particular, that young seamer, was bowling magnificently. She got the ball to really prodigiously swing into the to the batter. And, every time I think of batter, I think that yesterday being pancake day, I think of pancake batter. So batswoman, I suppose, would be, something I would use. But anyway, I don't want to split hairs on that. Marufa got the ball to swing in beautifully and had, I believe it was Volvart who was batting at the time. She had her out, could have had her out twice, LBW, and on both occasions, she ended up surviving. The problem with Bangladesh, though, is that when one of their bowlers does well, the others don't do too well. I take a look at the likes of Jahanara Mubarak, the more senior bowler, who wasn't quite able to be as penetrative and also conceded more than a few runs. So even if South Africa had lost a few wickets, it would have been a matter of time before the nature of their batting would have pretty much ground down the Bangladeshi bowlers. Chloe Tryon, in particular, the vice captain, wasn't picked to play against Sri Lanka rather. But when she came back into the team in subsequent games, she showed just what a quality cricketer she was and how important she was to the team. So, if anything, I think the slow we can crib about the slow nature of the partnership between Laura Volvart and Tamsin Brits, but bear in mind they had to make sure that they kept their wickets intact. Um, they did play some injudicious shots which weren't punished. I agree, but again, in cricket, it's all about how you can handle the pressure. And Bangladesh just didn't really have that much experience among them to try to really help them win those big moments. So it was really only academic. And once they got to the 50 partnership and made that 60 and 70, it really was a matter of time and a question of by how many wickets they would win. Of course, they did take it longer than certainly desired, but at the end of the day, Hanno, when it comes to these knockout games, the only statistic that matters is the one where you find the W or L at the end of the line.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think Bangladesh, they like the women, they have a bright future. Especially if you look versus sides like if they were in Group 2, you could say they could easily finish fourth or third, ahead of Pakistan or West Indies. That's just my opinion, because I think they have some good players, especially that woman that swings the ball in. She's got a bright future. So yeah, but it was tight. It came down to the last. I think Sri Lanka, they will be angry at themselves for not beating New Zealand. But what can you do? Like,
the problem with Sri Lanka, Hanno, was that they depend a little bit too much on their captain, Chamari Atapattu, to help them get over the line more often than not. And she, in fact, was the difference between a win and a loss in the first game. They just couldn't really turn it on when it mattered. And that's the big folly. When you select a squad, if you are lucky to be selected as part of the squad, you've also got to show that you are more than capable. But sadly, they just weren't able to, do that. And that is something which Sri Lanka are going to have to look to try and improve on. Like Bangladesh, they have some young players who can certainly, cause a great deal of problems, and they can certainly, they certainly do have a bright future there. But they've got to learn to try to step up themselves, and they can't keep depending on their senior players or captain to bail them out. And Marufa Akhtar is her name, 18 years and 20 days, right arm, medium fast, beautiful swing of the ball, definitely a bright future ahead of her.
Yeah, definitely. But Group 2, of course, England and India, with West Indies, Pakistan, and Ireland. Mani, as England is in this group, I'm gonna let you take away. Explain what happened in this group.
Well, not to blow my trumpet, but this group finished as expected with England and India qualifying. Both of these two countries have pretty much been near the top of the pile when it comes to limited overs play, whether it's ODI or T20 internationals. And the England-India game was always expected to be the game which would decide the group. And so it proved as, England, under the captaincy of Heather Knight and with the likes of Natalie and Catherine Sciver-Brunt, Sophie Eccleston, and Alice Capsey, and more than a few others, a lot of people stood up for that England team and really made sure that they would do quite well. When India played against England, I think they were depending a little bit too much on two players themselves, the likes of Smriti Mandhana and Harmanpreet Kaur and a few others. I believe it was their wicketkeeper Ghosh who came in, Richa Ghosh came in and hit out really well in the last over. But again, I think it's their lack of, street smarts when it came to that particular game. Sometimes you've got to know how to make sure that your best batswomen farm the strike well so that they can have a chance of scoring more runs. And India had England in trouble in that match at 29 for 3, but England did recover magnificently. And some late order batting from England really makes them favourites, because when the lower order gets as many runs as they do, that makes you a really, really powerful and formidable team. Never ever underestimate the importance of genuine all-rounders who are at the top of their game. Maybe South Africa have their own all-rounder in Chloe Tryon. I know that Marizanne Kapp can perhaps bat a bit. And we will be playing South Africa in the semi-finals. We'll segue into that. So that's how it proved. With regard to Pakistan, they had their moments. They took India a long way, and of course, they beat Ireland as expected. They probably should have done a lot more to try to put themselves over the line against the West Indies, but just weren't really able to back themselves whenever they could. I thought the West Indies also played some really good cricket and patches, but again, when it came to the big moments against the big teams, they were just found wanting. And Ireland, don't discount them. At one particular stage, they very nearly could have beaten India, only to lose their last game against them by 5 runs on the Duckworth-Lewis method. Maybe if they had started to hit out a bit more, they could have been on a par score and could have put India in a bit of trouble. It probably wouldn't have affected them with regard to qualification from the group because their run rate was much superior to that of the West Indies. But again, it would have meant that their qualification would have depended on England making sure they beat Pakistan. And of course, it worked out that England hammered Pakistan in the final game to really assert their dominance. So Group 2 was pretty much as expected. And although it looks a little bit more straightforward, there was good cricket in patches played by the 3 teams that didn't qualify. So there is certainly a lot to look forward to for all those teams, but they are going to have to start learning a little bit more, learning how to decide which shots to play and which shots not to play, how to effectively run between the wickets, convert your ones into twos and twos into threes, how to make sure your ground fielding will be a lot more spot on to make sure the ball doesn't go behind you. These are things which I'm sure they will take away and learn. And once they do, they will come back to this tournament as better cricketers. And maybe we'll see the likes of Ireland making history with some wins or two. Maybe Pakistan or the West Indies can go a bit further. And they can challenge the existing world order, as it were.
Yeah, we could see it. But like you said, I expected a bit better from Pakistan, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
At least with Pakistan, we'll remember that they were at the tournament because they had one of the only players to score a century in this tournament. I think if we take a look at the stats, I want to try and see if there were the team records, batting records, high scores. Yes, Muniba Ali was the only batswoman in the tournament to score a century with a 68 ball knock against Ireland at exactly 3 runs every 2 balls. So at least we'll remember Pakistan's contribution to the World Cup. There is a lot of talent there, but again, all these teams which didn't qualify, they're going to have a little bit of work to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. But we're going to move on to a big clash. I believe it is a derby. It's a sort of derby. You see it in the men's. It's India versus Australia. This game takes place tomorrow at 1 p.m. UK time. And it's a big one. You got India, who are second favorites, Australia, the main favorites. They have won every game. India just lost to England. So this is a big game. This is a big game for India, as I believe it will be almost a second or third final.
Semi-final.
No, final, right? Final. Yeah. Semi-final. Sorry. So I'm just gonna check that. But Manny, what do you make of this?
Yeah, obviously, in Australia and England, you've got the 2 teams, the 2 best performing teams in the tournament. And of course, Australia, as Group 1 winners, will be playing the runners up of Group 2, India. And over here where I live, a lot of hopes have been placed on the Indian team's shoulders, especially with the Indian under 19 women beating England to win the under 19 2020 World Championship. So obviously, women's cricket has come a long way in India, and certainly with the likes of, as I've mentioned, Harmanpreet Kaur and the vice captain Mandana. There are several other players like Jemima Rodriguez and among the bowlers, certainly the likes of Renuka Singh, who took a 5 for against England, if I'm not wrong. No, that wasn't her. That was that was Renuka Singh. I'm sorry about that. And they've got some really good left arm spinners in the likes of Rajeshwari Gaikwad and who else? Radha Yadav. So they do have a decent attack that can certainly perform well, and certainly some very, very classy batswomen. I think, as I've said, the problems that they have would be to make sure that they are able to get some good partnerships, but also able to take advantage of the strike whenever they get it. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they will do against an Australian team, which is certainly firing on all cylinders. I think it's fair to say that Meg Lanning is certainly at the moment, in charge of a team which is quite simply, every single one of their players are doing really well. Whether it's Lanning or Alyssa Healy or the likes of Ashley Gardner, Talia McGrath, certainly a very powerful hitter. Elise Perry, the superstar all-rounder, and the another wicketkeeper, Beth Mooney. She's not really playing, but again, the leg break bowler, Georgia Wareham. They have some players right now in that team who are certainly, on top of their game and performing very well. And they seem to have all the answers when it comes to being able to deal with whatever bowling they face this tournament. So India will have their work cut out. Certainly the likes of Renuka Singh and Pooja Vastrkar will have a role to play with the ball, with the new ball. And then the spinners like Gaikwad and Yadav and company will also have a role to play. It'll be very interesting to see if they decide to open with spin. But from what I've seen from the Australian batswomen, they've been able to deal with everything they've faced very comfortably. So it's hard to look beyond an Australian win, but sometimes in these semi-final clashes, form goes out the window. It's all about how you perform on the day. So India do have some chance if they can get things clicking. You just never know.
Yeah. I believe it is India's second semi-final. So yeah, and we all know Australia. They've been very much favourites. We have yourself, Mason. Hope you are good. Australia will win. For me, it's a tight one to call. We saw what Australia did when they played. They didn't play. We saw what India did when they played England, and it was okay. It was not the best performance. It was an okay performance. So yeah, but what do you make of this, Manny?
I mean, as I said, you can't look too far beyond an Australian win. But as you said, India gave England an almighty scare. They had them at 29 for 3, and Renuka did take a 5 for in that match. So, and of course, with Mandana and Richa Ghosh being able to hit quite well, let's not forget Jemima Rodriguez and Harmanpreet Kaur, the captain. They do have a good team. It's a question of how each player in the Indian team will know their role and perform to that role. If they do click, there's no reason why they can't, put up a really good fight. But I really can't see beyond an Australia win. But it will be mightily close. If it, well, Englishmen are not very fond of the Aussies and sporting disciples, and I'm sure if England and Australia were to face each other in the final, we'd be behind England all the way. But if India win, it'll be quite nice. Knock Australia off their perch, defending champions and all that.
But Manny, your prediction time.
Yeah, I think Australia will win this probably It'll be by a very small margin. I would say they'd either win it by 20 runs if they bat first, or if they bowl first, then they should win by 4 wickets.
Yeah, I'm backing Australia to win them. So yeah, both going Australia win. Now we move on. Oh, I can't wait for this match. It's an old
Yeah.
rivalry. South Africa have been knocked out so many times in the semi-finals by England, but can they get to the final as those nation? And it's never times. It's never times as South African, and you don't know all the crack on the pressure. Um, but England, for the first time in a while, they're heavy favourites going into a match. They're very heavy favourites going into this match. You look in the group, they didn't lose a game. In only game they struggled was India, so it's going to be a big test for England. But Manny, from an English perspective, what do you make? How can England threaten South Africa? Now can South Africa threaten England?
Well, from an English perspective, I think we only need to take a look at South Africa's performances and say that the lack of experience and partnerships in the batting side could very well cost them. And certainly, if Marufa Akhtar was able to, have the likes of Volvart and Brits playing, all ends up, um, I'm sure that the likes of Catherine Brunt and company will certainly relish bowling to them as long as they're able to bowl a tight line. Of course, that is a very big if because England's bowlers, the only black mark against them would be that they have conceded more than a few extras during the group stages, but their knack of taking wickets and their mastery with the bat has pretty much saved them on many occasions. Attacking their batting will probably end up being key and certainly preventing any partnerships from taking place will certainly impede their efforts to get a really big total. And as far as the batting is concerned, we certainly look very good, but we're going to come up against a South African team where, in the likes of Mlaba, I want to make sure I pronounce her first name correctly. I'm very, very particular about that. I think in Kaka and Mlaba, you've got two of the most of the best performing and most underrated bowlers in the tournament. And certainly a lot of the senior bowlers like Shabnim Ismail, Marizan Kapp, and others have performed quite well. Special mention, of course, must be made of Chloe Tryon and her shoulder ball left arm spin, which has certainly provided more than a few problems. I've got the squad with me right now. And of course, Sune Luce is the one of the youngest captains in this tournament, having a lot of 30-year-olds under her command. And yeah, Ayabonga Khaka and Nonkululeko Mlaba. Mlaba's left arm spin being used at the beginning of the innings has really troubled a lot of good batsmen in the group stages. So it's going to be interesting to see how England's opening batsmen will come to grips with that. I think they're going to have a lot of net sessions with Sophie Eccleston, also a left arm spinner, to make sure that they get to grips with any arm balls or ones which go the wrong uns or what have you. And that's going to be very interesting indeed. Now, if I were the South African coach, I'd be telling my batswomen to completely, keep their defenses exceptionally tight. Don't play any really loose shots. Avoid the temptation to play across the line like Wolvart did too often against Bangladesh. And just, play judiciously and don't attempt any ridiculous singles because I'm sure England's fielders will certainly have a lot to say. And as far as the bowling is concerned, stick to a good line, no loose deliveries, and you just don't know what might happen. I think when it comes to when it comes to both teams in terms of their strength, again, I think England should just have enough for South Africa, and it's not going to be a very heavy win, but it will be. I predict a bigger win for England over South Africa than Australia over India. I'm going to go with a 30 run or 5 wicket win for England.
You're going to go with England. That's
Of
not
course.
really. I'm not really fond of that prediction. Like,
Of course you
it's
wouldn't
been.
be. It's being held in your home country. You're a proud South African.
Uh,
You have to go with your heart.
I don't know. Realistically, I think you guys won. Realistically, but I just think we can edge it. So I'm going to go with realistically England win. I see in it South Africa won. So, well,
And one question though, which players are you going to look out for when the Proteas come up against the Three Lions?
well, your openers, that's the main thing. You guys got some good openers. I'm just gonna get your squad up here.
But what
Um,
about your team? That's the question.
my team, if I was England, I will mostly fear Laura Wolfart getting to grips with the with batting. If she can get going, I think you guys are done. Like it's done. I'm just gonna get the England um batting list. I think Nat Burnt. I think she's a really good player. Seen her put up some crazy stuff. And bowling wise, I think your best bowler is going to be Sarah Glenn, um, and Nat Brent Bent. I think those are your two best players.
Not a word about our slow left arm spinner Sophie Eccles.
Not really, not really. I think she's economical, but I think we can put her away. We got some good spinners. So spin ball playing spin batsman. So yeah, but we will be back in a short while. Um, literally 20 minutes each. When me and Manu will be both on the RB Leipzig vs Man City watch long, but we've gone both for Australia and we've gone, of course, opposite sides, South Africa and England. So, yeah, big, big matchups expected. Um, so, yeah, nah, hopefully it is a good game. I believe it will be. And I don't know, Money, will you be free? Then we can do watch longs to both games, to both semi-finals.
I'll have to see. I mean, I should definitely be free for the Friday game. I was planning on going out on Friday, but then I wasn't going to miss the second semi-final. As far as the first one is concerned, I may be available for the first half. I might possibly be working for an hour after that, but then, yeah, why not? If we can do it together, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think it's a bit stupid that they have made it early, like the early yeah um matches, that they've made the matches earlier. That's a bit tricky. Like you're not gonna get loads of people watching it, especially overseas. So yeah, but no, I think it's going to be two interesting games. Not beating this time, bro. this It's England's time. Well, you can't both men and women can't have the trophies. Like, no. Um, uh, but yeah, we'll end it here. Um, yeah, we'll still all in a bit, people. So yeah, see you all in a bit. Peace.